A troubled partnership, Canada-US trade at a crossroads. The economic relationship between these two neighboring countries is facing unprecedented challenges. The United States and Canada, two of the largest economies in the world, have long enjoyed a symbiotic trade relationship. These two North American giants share the world's longest undefended border and a rich history of economic cooperation. From bustling border cities like Detroit and Windsor to the natural wonders of Niagara Falls, the connection is both geographical and economic. For decades, their economies have been deeply intertwined. Goods and services flow seamlessly across the border, creating a robust trade network that supports millions of jobs. Canada relies heavily on the US as its largest trading partner. Canadian factories produce a wide array of goods destined for American markets, from automobiles to agricultural products. The US in turn benefits from Canada's vast natural resources and skilled workforce. American industries depend on Canadian raw materials such as lumber and oil to fuel their production lines. This mutually beneficial relationship has fostered economic growth and prosperity on both sides of the border. Joint ventures and cross-border investments have flourished, creating a dynamic economic landscape. However, the once predictable rhythm of Canada-US trade has been disrupted. The global trade environment is shifting and new challenges are emerging. Recent years have seen the emergence of protectionist sentiments, particularly in the US. Political movements advocating for domestic job protection and economic nationalism have gained traction. This shift in policy, driven by the Trump administration, has cast a shadow over the future of the Canada-US economic partnership. Tariffs and trade barriers have been introduced, disrupting the flow of goods and services. As trade tensions escalate, businesses and consumers on both sides of the border are bracing for uncertainty. The impact is felt in closed storefronts and tense boardroom discussions. The current trade turmoil has raised fundamental questions about the future of the Canada-US economic relationship. Experts and policymakers are debating the best path forward. Canada, long accustomed to relying on its southern neighbor, is now compelled to reevaluate its trade strategy. The Canadian government is actively seeking ways to mitigate the risks associated with overdependence on the US market. Diversifying its trade partnerships and reducing its economic dependence on the US have become top priorities for the Canadian government. Efforts are underway to strengthen ties with other global markets, including Asia and Europe. The stakes are high, and the outcome of this trade turbulence will have far-reaching consequences for both nations. The decisions made today will shape the economic landscape of North America for years to come, influencing everything from job creation to international relations. Tariff torpedoes, Trump's policies and the initial shockwaves. In 2018, the Trump administration announced a series of tariffs on Canadian imports, including steel and aluminum. This move was part of a broader strategy to protect American industries and jobs, but it quickly became a flashpoint in international trade relations. These tariffs, justified on the grounds of national security, sent shockwaves through the Canadian economy. The immediate reaction was one of concern and uncertainty, as businesses and investors scrambled to understand the implications. Canada, caught off guard by the move, quickly retaliated with tariffs of its own on a range of US products. This swift response was aimed at protecting Canadian interests and sending a clear message to the US administration. This marked the beginning of a tit-for-tat trade war between the two allies. The escalating tensions were evident in the increasingly strained diplomatic exchanges and the growing list of tariffs on both sides. The immediate impact of the tariffs was felt across various sectors of the Canadian economy. Businesses that relied heavily on steel and aluminum found themselves facing higher costs and reduced competitiveness. Steel and aluminum producers faced higher costs, threatening their competitiveness. Many companies had to make difficult decisions, including cutting back on production or laying off workers. Industries that rely on these metals as inputs, such as manufacturing and construction, were also affected. Projects were delayed, costs increased, and the overall economic activity in these sectors slowed down. The tariffs created uncertainty and disrupted supply chains, leading to delays and increased expenses for businesses. Companies had to navigate a new and unpredictable landscape, which often meant higher prices for consumers. The imposition of tariffs marked a significant departure from the long-standing free trade principles that had governed Canada-US trade relations. For decades, the two countries had enjoyed a relatively open and cooperative trading relationship. The move was met with widespread condemnation from Canadian businesses, politicians, and economists. They argued that the tariffs were not only unjustified but also harmful to both economies. And undermined the spirit of the North American Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA had been a cornerstone of North American economic integration, and the tariffs threatened to unravel years of progress. The trade dispute cast a pall over the Canadian economy, raising concerns about its potential impact on jobs, investment, and consumer confidence. The uncertainty created by the tariffs made it difficult for businesses to plan for the future.
These tariffs are necessary to protect our national security and American jobs. The administration believed that by imposing these tariffs, they were taking a strong stance to defend American interests and ensure the long-term viability of key industries. The goal was to revitalize American manufacturing and reduce dependency on foreign imports. However, the broader economic implications and the strain on international relations were significant and far-reaching. As the trade war continued, it became clear that the repercussions would be felt not just in North America, but around the world. The global economy is interconnected, and disruptions in one region can have ripple effects across the globe. Despite the tensions, efforts to negotiate and find a resolution continued. Both sides recognized the importance of their economic relationship and the need to find a path forward that would benefit both countries. Ultimately, the goal was to reach an agreement that would address the concerns of both nations while preserving the strong trade ties that had been built over decades. The road to resolution was challenging, but the stakes were too high for either side to ignore.
Trudeau's tightrope walk balancing retaliation with diplomacy. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau found himself in a delicate position as the trade dispute with the U.S. escalated. The stakes were high, and the decisions he made would have far-reaching consequences for the Canadian economy and its international standing. On the one hand, he faced pressure to respond forcefully to the tariffs, which were seen as an attack on Canadian sovereignty. The public and political opposition demanded a strong stance to protect national pride and economic interests. On the other hand, he had to weigh the potential consequences of escalating the trade war with Canada's largest trading partner. The economic interdependence between the two nations meant that any aggressive move could backfire, harming Canadian businesses and workers. Trudeau's government opted for a two-pronged approach: retaliation and diplomacy. This strategy aimed to show strength while keeping the door open for negotiation and resolution. Canada responded to the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory tariffs of its own, targeting products carefully chosen for their political significance in key U.S. states. This move was designed to apply pressure on influential American politicians and business leaders. At the same time, Trudeau engaged in diplomatic efforts to resolve the dispute through dialogue and negotiation. He reached out to allies, sought support from international trade organizations, and worked tirelessly to find a peaceful resolution.
We will always stand up for Canadian workers and businesses. Our commitment to protecting our economy and our people is unwavering. These tariffs are unacceptable, and we will take the necessary steps to protect our interests. We will not be bullied into submission.
Trudeau's balancing act reflected the complex realities of Canada's relationship with the U.S. It was a delicate dance of asserting national interests while maintaining diplomatic channels. While Canada was determined to defend its interests, it also recognized the importance of maintaining a constructive relationship with its southern neighbor. The economic ties between the two countries were too significant to ignore. The trade dispute tested the limits of the Canada-US partnership and highlighted the challenges of navigating the unpredictable waters of Trump-era trade policy. It was a period of uncertainty, but also an opportunity to redefine and strengthen the bilateral relationship. Trudeau's approach was not without its critics. Some argued that he was too soft, while others believed he was too aggressive. The reality was that there were no easy answers, and every decision came with its own set of risks and rewards. In the end, Trudeau's strategy of balancing retaliation with diplomacy aimed to protect Canada's economic interests while fostering a climate of cooperation and mutual respect. It was a testament to the complexities of modern governance and international relations. As the trade dispute evolved, it became clear that the path forward would require patience, resilience, and a commitment to finding common ground. Trudeau's leadership during this challenging time showcased his ability to navigate the intricate landscape of global politics. The lessons learned from this period would shape Canada's approach to international trade for years to come, emphasizing the importance of both standing firm and seeking diplomatic solutions. Driving into uncertainty, the auto industry grapples with tariffs. Few industries embody the interconnectedness of the Canada-US economic relationship as clearly as the automotive sector. For decades, vehicles and auto parts have flowed freely across the border, a testament to the deep integration of the two countries' supply chains. However, the imposition of tariffs threatened to disrupt this carefully calibrated ecosystem. The U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum had a ripple effect on the auto industry. Canadian auto parts suppliers faced higher costs, putting them at a disadvantage to their global competitors. Automakers with plants in Canada, including General Motors, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler, expressed concerns about the tariffs' impact on their operations.
The tariffs have really put us in a tough spot. Our costs have gone up and it's hard to stay competitive.
The uncertainty surrounding the future of NAFTA, which was being renegotiated at the time, added to the industry's woes. The Trump administration had threatened to impose tariffs on Canadian-made vehicles, a move that would have had severe consequences for the Canadian economy. The auto industry, a major employer in Canada, faced the prospect of job losses and plant closures if the trade dispute was not resolved.